Lyra's name was known across the galaxy. From the frozen plains of Zinor to the molten caves of Valar, every warrior had heard of her skill. She was young, fast, and strong. She could defeat anyone who stepped into the arena. Many called her the unstoppable champion, and she had earned that title through countless victories. Lyra loved the attention and the feeling of being the best. She walked with pride and spoke with confidence. For her, losing was impossible. The planet Zytheria was famous for its warrior arenas. These arenas were enormous, built from shining metal and reinforced stone, stretching across valleys and mountains. Thousands of spectators could watch the fights, both in person and through holographic transmissions to other planets. For the warriors, winning in the arena meant honor, wealth, and respect. Losing could mean exile, humiliation, or worse. Lyra thrived in this world. Every opponent she faced fell before her blade. Every fight was a show of her strength, speed, and intelligence. It was the morning of the grand tournament, the most important event of the year. Lyra walked through the bustling streets of Zytheria's capital. Merchants shouted their prices, children ran between legs, and warriors prepared for the day ahead. She felt the eyes of the crowd on her. People whispered her name, some with fear, others with admiration. Lyra smiled. She loved it. She loved being the center of attention, the one everyone watched. In the arena, the other warriors were already waiting. Some were seasoned veterans, their faces scarred from many battles. Others were young challengers eager to prove themselves. None of them felt confident against Lyra. Her reputation had grown so large that many refused to fight her. But the council that controlled the arena wanted her to compete. They wanted to see if anyone could finally beat her. The first match began with a tall, muscular alien named Tharok. He was known for his strength and had never lost in the opening round. Lyra stepped forward, her silver blade gleaming in the sunlight. The crowd cheered. Tharok raised his own weapon and charged. Lyra moved with grace and speed. She dodged his heavy strikes and countered with precision. In a few moments, she disarmed him and sent him sprawling to the ground. The audience erupted in applause, but Lyra only smirked. Tharok struggled to stand, his pride wounded more than his body. Next came a pair of twin warriors, Vara and Vin, known for their teamwork. They attacked together, moving in perfect coordination. Lyra faced them calmly. She watched their movements, noting every pattern, every hesitation. With skillful strikes, she separated them and defeated each one individually. They fell, panting and humiliated. Lyra's confidence grew. She felt unstoppable. As the tournament continued, Lyra faced warriors of every kind, fast, strong, clever, and even those who used strange alien technology in combat. Each one fell before her skill. She moved like a shadow, striking with precision, blocking every attack. She laughed sometimes, enjoying the thrill of the fight. Her victories became almost a performance, a display of her talent for everyone to see. But not everyone admired Lyra. Behind the cheering crowd, the council of the arena watched her with concern. They were older, experienced warriors and leaders who understood the balance needed for the arenas to remain fair. Lyra's victories were so complete that no one else could compete. If this continued, the excitement of the tournaments would disappear, and the council's authority might be questioned. Some council members whispered to each other. "She is too proud," said one, his eyes narrowing. "Her arrogance will bring trouble." "She knows no fear," said another. "But fear is what keeps warriors careful. Without it, she may destroy everything we built." Lyra, unaware of their concern, continued to fight. In the final round, her opponent was the reigning champion of Zytheria, an older warrior named Kale. He had won many tournaments and was respected for his skill and wisdom. The crowd cheered loudly as he stepped into the arena. Lyra's eyes gleamed. She wanted to win without effort, to show once again that no one could touch her. Kale was calm. He did not rush. He moved with experience and strategy. Lyra attacked aggressively, expecting an easy victory, but Kale blocked her strikes and countered with controlled power. The fight was different from her previous battles. She had to think, adjust, and move carefully. Her pride bristled at this challenge. For the first time, she felt a flicker of doubt, but she refused to show it. With one swift maneuver, she disarmed Kale and pushed him to the ground. The crowd roared. Lyra had won again. She lifted her blade high, shouting her name. Some cheered loudly, others whispered in fear. Kale struggled to rise, breathing heavily. He looked at Lyra, not with anger, but with something she did not understand. Concern. You fight well, Kyle said, his voice calm. But your pride will be your downfall if you do not learn respect. Lyra laughed, brushing off his words. I need no lessons. No one can defeat me. Not now, not ever. Her arrogance echoed across the arena. It reached the ears of the council, who were already unhappy with her behavior. They called her to a private chamber. Lyra entered, expecting congratulations. Instead, she found the council members waiting, their expressions serious. Lyra, the council head said, your victories are impressive, but your attitude is dangerous. You show no respect, insult other warriors, and threaten the balance of our arenas. I am the strongest, Lyra replied proudly. I do not need respect. I do not need balance. I need only victory. The council members exchanged glances. They had given her warnings before, but she ignored them. Now they had no choice. You are being exiled, the council announced. You will leave Zytheria and go to Draxus. There you will face challenges that may test you beyond your skill with a blade. Perhaps you will learn humility. Perhaps you will not survive. Either way, your time here is ended. Lyra's eyes widened in shock. Exiled? You cannot do this. I am the champion. I am the best. The decision is final, the council said. You have earned your victories, but your arrogance threatens everything. Prepare to leave. Lyra felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. No one had ever dared to exile her. She had defeated every warrior, proven herself countless times. How could they send her away? She struggled to speak, but the council did not budge. That night, Lyra packed her belongings. She took her blade, her armor, and a few personal items. Her mind was filled with frustration and determination. She would not be broken by exile. She would show the council and the galaxy that she could survive anywhere. The transport ship to Draxus waited. Lyra stepped aboard, looking out at the vast city she had once ruled in battle. She did not shed tears. Pride and anger burned within her. The stars stretched out before her, unknown and dangerous. Draxus was a harsh planet known for its rocky terrain, violent storms, and dangerous wildlife. Few warriors survived for long there. Lyra's confidence was shaken slightly as she gazed at the barren landscape from the ship. She had faced strong opponents, but Draxus was different. Survival here would require more than skill with a blade. She would need strategy, patience, and cleverness. The ship landed with a harsh thud. Lyra stepped onto the rocky ground, feeling the wind whip against her face. The planet smelled of sulfur and stone. Strange creatures moved in the distance, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Lyra tightened her grip on her blade. She would adapt. She would survive. She would conquer this new world, just as she had conquered every opponent before. As she walked into the alien wilderness, Lyra thought about the council's words. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps her pride had blinded her. But she would learn in her own way. She would not bow to anyone. She would fight, think, and survive. She would find a way to turn exile into victory. And somewhere in the galaxy across the stars, a human warrior named Ethan was hearing the story of Lyra's exile. He did not know her personally, but he had heard of her skill. Unlike others, he did not fear her or mock her. Instead, he felt curious. Perhaps, he thought, he would meet this unstoppable champion someday. Perhaps he could test his own skills against hers. For now, Lyra's story had only just begun. Exiled from Zytheria, she stepped into a world that would challenge every part of her. Strength, speed, intelligence, and pride would all be tested. And whether she survived or failed, the galaxy would be watching. Lyra tightened her grip on her blade once more, her eyes gleaming with determination. No one has ever defeated me, she whispered to herself.
And no one will, not here.
Not anywhere. The wind howled, the rocks shifted under her feet, and the first storm of Draxus began to rage. Lyra smiled. This was her new arena, and she was ready. Lyra stepped carefully across the jagged rocks of Draxus. The wind whipped against her face, carrying dust and grit that stung her eyes. The planet was nothing like Zytheria. There were no grand arenas, no cheering crowds, no streets filled with traders and warriors. Here, survival was the only rule. The ground beneath her boots was uneven, sharp stones cutting through her soles despite her armor. She realized quickly that skill with a blade would not be enough to succeed here. The first night was the hardest. Darkness fell quickly and the temperature dropped. Lyra found a small cave to shelter in, but even there the wind screamed like a living thing. Strange cries echoed from outside. She lit a small fire and sat close, wrapping herself in a blanket she had carried. Hunger and exhaustion gnawed at her, but Lyra refused to let fear control her. She reminded herself of who she was, the champion, the warrior who could defeat anyone. By the second day, Lyra realized that Draxus was testing her in ways she had never imagined. Rock shifted under her weight, storms came without warning, and predators moved silently in the shadows. She tried hunting small creatures for food, but they were fast and clever. Unlike the warriors of Zytheria, these creatures did not attack her directly. They tested her patience, her strategy, and her observation skills. Lyra grew frustrated. She had always relied on strength and skill with her blade. Now she needed patience and intelligence. As she moved deeper into the rocky terrain, she noticed signs of other exiles, marks carved into stones, small shelters hidden under overhangs, and traps set to catch food. Lyra realized that she was not the first warrior to be sent here. Others had come before her, and some had survived. She studied their tracks and learned from them. She began to set traps herself, using simple tools and her growing knowledge of the land. Days passed, and Lyra grew stronger in ways she had never expected. Her muscles became leaner from climbing rocks and running across uneven terrain. Her mind became sharper, noticing patterns in the movement of creatures and the weather. She began experimenting with her blade in new ways, not just to fight but to create tools for survival. She cut branches to make simple spears, sharpened stones for hunting, and even crafted small barriers to protect herself during storms. Despite her growing skills, Lyra often felt lonely. In Zytheria, she had people to fight, people to admire her, people to challenge her. Here there was only silence, the howl of the wind and the distant cries of Draxus creatures. At night she would sit by her fire and remember the cheers of the crowd, the excitement of the arenas, and the proud faces of those she had defeated. Sometimes she wondered if exile was a punishment or a lesson. One day, while exploring a narrow canyon, Lyra heard a strange sound. It was a soft tapping, like something moving carefully over the rocks. She crouched low, her blade ready. From the shadows, a small alien predator leaped out. Its eyes glowed a faint green and its claws were sharp. But Lyra did not strike immediately. She watched its movements. The creature circled her, testing her reaction. Lyra realized it was intelligent, like a living puzzle. She shifted her weight, moved carefully, and finally used a branch to guide the creature into a small trap she had prepared. She caught it not for food but as a test of her new skills. Lyra smiled. This small victory, though not a battle against another warrior, gave her a sense of accomplishment. She was learning, adapting, and surviving. For the first time, she began to understand that strength alone was not enough. Strategy, patience, and observation were equally important. As the weeks passed, Lyra continued to train herself. She created a small shelter high on a cliff, where she could see the storms coming and spot predators from a distance. She learned to move silently across the rocks, to climb cliffs without making noise, and to hunt efficiently. Her body grew stronger, her mind sharper, and her confidence returned. Not the arrogant confidence of Zytheria, but a quieter, wiser strength. One morning, as she scouted the edge of a canyon, Lyra noticed movement in the distance. A figure was walking toward her across the rocky plains. At first she thought it was a predator, but as the figure came closer, she realized it was a human, a rarity in this part of the galaxy. Humans were known for their curiosity, intelligence, and adaptability, but they were also considered fragile compared to alien warriors. The human approached carefully, observing the terrain and avoiding obvious dangers. Lyra stayed hidden, watching him. There was something different about him. He moved with caution but also with confidence. Unlike other humans she had heard about, he did not run at the first sign of danger. He seemed aware of his surroundings, yet calm and deliberate. Lyra decided to reveal herself. She stepped out from behind a rock, her blade in hand, ready to defend herself. The human stopped, surprised, but did not show fear. His eyes met hers, steady and calm. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice firm. "You are far from home, human. Why are you here?" The human raised his hand slightly, not in surrender, but in a gesture of respect. "I have heard of you," he said. "Your skill, your victories, and your exile. I came to see for myself if the stories are true." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "You dare to approach me? You think you can challenge me?" The human smiled faintly. "I do not seek to defeat you for glory. I wish to test my own skills. Against the best." Lyra's heart raced. She had not faced a human warrior before. Humans were clever, unpredictable, and often underestimated. Her pride stirred. She wanted to see if this human could truly match her. "Very well," she said. "If you want a challenge, I will give you one. But know this, no one has ever defeated me." The human nodded. "I understand. I do not expect to win easily." They agreed to meet the next day at a flat plateau, clear of rocks and hazards. Lyra spent the rest of the day preparing, practicing her strikes and movements, thinking about the human's possible strategies. She felt a strange mix of excitement and caution. For the first time in weeks, she had someone to test herself against, a true challenge. That night, Lyra sat by her fire, sharpening her blade and reflecting on her exile. Draxus had changed her. She was stronger, smarter, and more adaptable than she had ever been. Yet she knew that the coming duel with the human could teach her even more. She wondered if he would surprise her, if he would match her speed and skill, or if he would find a weakness she had not noticed. As she drifted to sleep, the wind howled outside her shelter, carrying the sense of strange creatures and distant storms. Lyra felt alive in a way she had never experienced in the arenas of Scytheria. Survival here was more than fighting, it was thinking, observing, adapting. And soon she would face a challenge unlike any she had faced before. The sun rose the next morning, casting long shadows across the rocky plains of Draxus. Lyra stood on the plateau, her blade ready, eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance she saw movement, human movement. Her heart quickened. The duel was about to begin, not as a test of pride, but as a test of skill, intelligence, and courage. Lyra took a deep breath. She had survived exile, mastered the harsh world of Draxus, and adapted in ways she never thought possible. Whatever happened next, she was ready. And somewhere across the galaxy, she would be remembered, not just as the champion who could beat every warrior, but as the warrior who survived the unforgiving world of Draxus and met a human who could challenge her mind as well as her blade. The first steps of their duel would mark the beginning of something far greater than pride, far greater than victory. It would be a test of everything Lyra had learned, and perhaps a lesson in the true meaning of strength. The plateau stretched wide and flat under the harsh sun of Draxus. Jagged rocks lined the edges, and a sudden wind carried dust and grit across the ground. Lyra stood tall, her silver blade gleaming in the sunlight. She had trained for this moment, sharpening not only her skill with the weapon, but also her mind. For the first time since her exile, she felt anticipation, not just confidence. This human could be her greatest challenge yet. From the distant horizon, movement appeared. A figure approached steadily, confident but careful. Lyra watched every step, noting his posture, the rhythm of his walk, and the way he carried himself. He was a human, smaller than most Zetherian warriors, but there was a calm strength in his presence. He held no heavy weapon, only a light staff that seemed almost too simple. Yet Lyra sensed intelligence behind every movement. The human stopped a short distance from her. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "I am Ethan," he said. "I have heard of your skill, Lyra. I hope to learn from this encounter, not to humiliate you." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You speak boldly. Many come to challenge me for glory. Few survive." Her voice was firm but curious. She had expected arrogance or fear, but Ethan had neither. "I do not seek glory," he replied. "I seek to test myself against the best. If I fail, I will learn. If I succeed, I will gain knowledge." Lyra's pride flared. "Then you will face me with all your skill. Prepare yourself." The wind shifted, whipping dust across the plateau. Lyra assumed a combat stance, blade ready. Ethan mirrored her stance, staff in hand, eyes steady. For a moment there was silence, broken only by the occasional howl of Draxus' distant storms. The tension was palpable. Two warriors, different in every way, preparing to test their skill and intelligence. Lyra moved first. She lunged forward, her blade cutting through the air with speed and precision. Ethan reacted calmly, stepping aside with a smooth motion, deflecting the edge of her strike with the end of his staff. Lyra expected him to falter, but he did not. He moved with control, observing her every move. Strike after strike, Lyra pressed the attack. She used every skill she had honed in the arenas of Zethria, swift footwork, calculated angles, and unexpected feints. Yet Ethan matched her anticipation, dodging, blocking, and countering with intelligence rather than brute force. Lyra's brow furrowed. She had faced many warriors, but none had moved with this level of precision and calm. Ethan was smaller and less strong than most Zetherian warriors, but he had something they lacked: strategy. He studied Lyra, noting patterns in her movements. When she struck with speed, he anticipated the follow-up. When she feinted, he reacted carefully. Lyra's strikes were powerful, but Ethan's defenses were clever. Every time she thought she would land a blow, he was ready. The plateau became their arena. Dust swirled around them, kicked up by swift movements and sudden pivots. The sun glinted off Lyra's blade, casting sharp reflections across the rocks. Ethan moved like water, flowing around each strike, never stiff, never predictable. Lyra realized she had underestimated him. Not in strength, but in intelligence. She adjusted her strategy. Instead of relying on speed alone, she began using feints and misdirection, testing his reactions. Ethan responded with patience, analyzing each movement carefully. He did not rush, did not attack recklessly. He let Lyra make the first move and used her momentum to create openings. Hours seemed to pass, though in reality, it was only minutes. The duel was intense, both warriors fully focused. Lyra's arms ached from the constant strikes and her legs burned from rapid movements, but she refused to falter. Every strike she made, every step she took was met with intelligence and calm precision. Then came a moment that changed everything. Lyra leaped into the air, spinning her blade in a wide arc, intending to strike with a final decisive blow. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, but he did not panic. He moved forward with exact timing, placing his staff between himself and the blade. The collision of weapon against weapon created a sharp ringing sound that echoed across the plateau. Lyra's eyes widened. No warrior in Zytheria had ever stopped her strike like this. Her pride bristled and she pushed harder. Ethan did not falter. He held the force of her blade with his staff, using his weight and strategy rather than brute strength. Lyra realized in that instant that this human was unlike any opponent she had faced. She adjusted again, trying to pull him off balance with a feint to the left, then a strike to the right. Ethan anticipated the feint and moved with careful precision. Lyra spun, blocked, and struck again, faster than before. Dust swirled around them, caught in the wind, creating a dramatic, cinematic scene. The sun shone through the dust, glinting off their weapons. Every movement was sharp, every reaction calculated. Finally, Lyra felt a flicker of doubt. Her strikes, powerful and precise, were no longer enough. Ethan had caught her rhythm, matched her speed, and countered her strategy. For the first time in her life, she wondered if she might be defeated. Ethan spoke calmly, his voice cutting through the tension. Strength alone is not enough, Lyra. Strategy, patience, and observation are just as important. Lyra froze for a split second, considering his words. She had always relied on strength, speed, and skill. She had never considered that intelligence and patience could match brute power. Pride surged in her chest, but she also felt curiosity. Could this human truly teach her something she had not already learned? The duel resumed, more intense than before. Lyra used everything she knew: feints, quick strikes, powerful swings. Ethan countered each one, adapting to her style in real time. The ground beneath them shook as they moved, leaving trails of dust and footprints across the plateau. It was no longer just a test of strength. It was a test of mind, skill, and endurance. Then came the moment that would define the duel. Lyra lunged with a spinning strike, aiming to end the fight decisively. Ethan reacted instantly, stepping forward and catching the blade with both hands. The metallic ring of collision echoed across the plateau, startling even the distant creatures. Lyra's eyes widened. No one in Zytheria, not even the strongest warrior, had ever been able to catch her blade. Ethan held the strike with calm precision. Your strength is remarkable, he said, but a weapon alone does not make a warrior. Understanding, control, and courage matter more than raw power. Lyra felt a strange mixture of shock, fear, and admiration. Her pride burned, but for the first time, she recognized the value of intelligence and strategy over sheer force. She had met an opponent who challenged every part of her, body, mind, and spirit. The wind whipped around them, dust and grit stinging their eyes. The plateau seemed to hold its breath. Lyra realized that this duel was not about victory or defeat. It was about growth, about learning what it truly meant to be strong. Ethan's calm eyes met hers. You can surrender, or we can continue without weapons. The choice is yours. Lyra's grip on her blade tightened, then slowly relaxed. She lowered it, her chest heaving. She had never surrendered before, but she knew this was different. This was not defeat, it was understanding, respect, growth. I will continue, she said, her voice steady. But not just to fight. I will learn from you, Ethan nodded. Then we begin a new kind of duel. One of skill, intelligence, and respect. The two warriors lowered their weapons, taking a step back. They circled each other, still alert, still focused. The plateau was their arena, the wind their witness. The sun shone through dust and grit, creating a dramatic, cinematic scene that would be remembered across Draxus and beyond. For Lyra, the duel had already changed her. Exile had forced her to adapt, to survive, and now this human had challenged her mind and spirit. She realized that true strength was not just in power, but in wisdom, strategy, and humility. Ethan had shown her that being a warrior was more than winning fights. It was understanding, adapting, and respecting both oneself and others. And Lyra, the once arrogant champion of Zytheria, began to see the first glimpse of a new kind of power, one that came not just from the blade, but from the mind and heart. As the sun began to set over Draxus, casting long shadows across the rocky plateau, Lyra and Ethan continued their duel, not for victory, not for glory, but for learning, growth, and respect. And somewhere across the galaxy, the story of the human who matched the unstoppable champion would begin to spread. A story that would change the way many warriors thought about strength. Lyra's exile had led her here, to this plateau, to this duel, and to this lesson. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive, not just as a fighter, but as a warrior ready to grow beyond her limits. The wind of Draxus roared across the rocky plateau, carrying dust and grit that stung Lyra's eyes. Her silver blade was still in her hand, but her mind raced with thoughts she had never considered before. This human, Ethan, was unlike any opponent she had faced. Every move she made, he anticipated. Every strike she delivered, he blocked or countered with intelligence and calm precision. Pride had driven her to believe no one could match her skill. Now that pride was challenged in ways she had never imagined. The duel resumed at full intensity. Lyra moved with speed and precision, testing Ethan with feints, sudden lunges, and spinning strikes. Dust swirled around them, the late sun casting long shadows that danced across the plateau. Each of Lyra's strikes was powerful, calculated to end the fight. Yet Ethan matched her at every turn, using his staff not as a weapon for strength, but as a tool to redirect her attacks, study her rhythm, and exploit even the smallest openings. Lyra felt frustration rising. She had faced countless warriors in her life, and none had pushed her to think beyond brute strength. Ethan's calm focus was exhausting her, forcing her to adjust her strategy constantly. She realized she could no longer rely solely on speed and strength. She had to outthink him, anticipate his reactions, and adapt in real time. Ethan circled her, his staff held lightly, ready to respond to any attack. "Your movements are precise," he said calmly, "but you rely too much on speed. Strength alone will not win this duel. Observation and patience are just as important." Lyra gritted her teeth. Observation and patience? She had never needed them in the arenas of Zytheria. There, opponents fell before her without question. But here on Draxus, everything was different. The wind, the uneven ground, the strange creatures watching from the cliffs, it all demanded caution and intelligence. Lyra adjusted her stance, breathing deeply, trying to focus her mind as well as her body. She feinted to the left, expecting Ethan to follow, but he did not. He waited. Then, with a sudden shift, he moved into the path of her blade, catching it with his staff and holding it steady. Lyra's eyes widened. No warrior in her life had ever caught her strike. Her pride surged, but it was mixed now with admiration and fear. Ethan spoke calmly. "I do not wish to harm you unnecessarily. I only seek to test my skill and learn. Your strength is remarkable. But even the strongest warrior can be challenged by intelligence and timing." Lyra's hands tightened on her blade. She had to regain control of the fight. She pushed forward, attacking with a series of rapid strikes designed to overwhelm him. But Ethan moved with a precision that made each strike seem slower than it actually was. He blocked, redirected, and anticipated, forcing Lyra to adjust constantly. Sweat ran down her face, but she did not slow. The duel reached a dramatic intensity. Dust and grit whipped into the air, clinging to their armor and skin. The rocks beneath their feet shifted as they moved, adding another layer of danger to the fight. Every step was a test of balance, every strike a calculation of force and timing. Lyra realized that survival on Draxus had prepared her for this moment. Her training, patience, and adaptation had brought her to a new level. But Ethan's calm intelligence challenged her in ways she had never imagined. Lyra leapt into the air, spinning her blade in a wide arc. The motion was meant to be decisive, a strike that would end the duel. But Ethan's eyes were steady. He moved with perfect timing, placing his staff between himself and her blade. The collision of metal echoed across the plateau, sharp and ringing. Lyra's arms tensed, but the blade did not move. For the first time, she faced the reality that raw strength alone could not win. Ethan's voice broke through the tension. Lyra, strength is only part of being a warrior. Control, understanding, and courage matter more than power. Lyra's mind raced. He was right. She had relied on her strength for so long, believing no one could match her. Yet here she was, caught by a human using intelligence and precision. Her pride burned, but a new feeling emerged, curiosity. Could she learn from him? Could she grow beyond the champion she had always been? The wind picked up, carrying dust into their eyes. Lyra tightened her grip, adjusting her stance. She attacked again, faster and more carefully this time, using feints, spins, and sudden changes of direction. Ethan responded with calm, calculated movements, countering and redirecting each strike. The duel became a dance of skill and intelligence, strength and strategy. Lyra's breaths came faster, her muscles burning with effort. She realized that this was not just a fight, it was a lesson. Every movement, every strike, every reaction taught her something new. She felt herself changing, adapting in ways she had never expected. Her pride was still there, but it had begun to temper with understanding. Then came the critical moment. Lyra swung her blade in a final spinning strike, aiming to end the duel. Ethan reacted instantly. He stepped forward, caught her blade with both hands, and held it steady. The force of the strike caused a sharp ringing sound echoing across the rocky plateau. Lyra froze, eyes wide. Her blade, her pride, her power, all held firmly in the hands of a human. For the first time, she felt a mixture of fear and respect. "How?" she whispered, barely audible over the wind. Ethan held her gaze steadily. "Strength alone is not enough, Lyra. You must also understand your opponent, your environment, and yourself. Only then can a warrior be complete." Lyra's arms shook, but she did not release her grip immediately. Pride struggled with realization. She had always thought of victory as simple: overpower and strike. But this human had shown her that true strength was more than that. It was intelligence, patience, courage, and understanding. The wind howled louder, swirling dust around them. Lyra's blade wavered slightly under the pressure of Ethan's hold. With careful force, Ethan shifted his grip and the blade cracked, shattering into two pieces. Lyra gasped, staring at the broken weapon. She had never faced such a moment. Every battle before had ended with her standing victorious. Now her weapon was gone and she was faced with a new truth. Victory was not guaranteed and strength alone was not enough. Ethan stepped back, releasing the broken pieces of her blade. "I will not harm you further," he said calmly. "The choice is yours. Surrender or continue without a weapon." Lyra's chest heaved. Her mind raced, her heart pounding in her chest. Pride and fear clashed inside her. She had been the unstoppable champion, undefeated and arrogant. Yet here she was, disarmed and challenged by a human who had not sought to humiliate her, only to test her skill. Slowly, Lyra lowered her hands. Her voice was steady, though filled with new understanding. I will continue," she said. "Not to fight, but to learn, to grow, to understand what it truly means to be a warrior." Ethan nodded, a faint smile on his face. "Then we begin a new kind of duel," he said. "One of skill, intelligence, and respect." The wind of Draxus continued to roar, but the tension shifted. No longer was this a battle of pride alone. It was a lesson, a test, a moment that would change Lyra forever. She felt a strange mix of humility and determination. Her exile had brought her to this place, and this human had opened her eyes to a new kind of strength. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the rocky plateau. Dust swirled around them, caught in the golden light. Lyra and Ethan stood facing each other, no longer as opponent and challenger, but as warriors learning from one another. For Lyra, the shattered blade was not a symbol of defeat. It was a symbol of growth, of understanding, and of a strength that went beyond physical power. She realized that true mastery came from the mind and heart, as much as from skill and speed. The plateau, once a stage for a simple duel, had become a place of transformation. Lyra had faced her limits, confronted her pride, and learned the first lessons of humility and respect. And Ethan, calm and steady, had shown her that even the strongest warrior could grow when challenged by intelligence, strategy, and courage. As the sky darkened and Draxus winds howled louder, Lyra knew one thing clearly: her journey was far from over. The duel had ended, but the lessons she had learned would guide her forever. She had faced the unexpected, been challenged, and survived, and in doing so, she had begun the path to becoming a warrior greater than she had ever imagined. The plateau was quiet now, save for the wind of Draxus whistling across jagged rocks. Lyra stood breathing deeply, her broken blade at her feet. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and red. Dust swirled around her boots and the world felt vast, alive, and humbling. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt a strange peace. Ethan stepped closer, his staff resting lightly in his hand. "You have learned much today," he said calmly. "Not just about fighting, but about yourself. Strength is important, but understanding and adaptability are what make a true warrior." Lyra nodded slowly, still catching her breath. Pride had always been her shield and weapon, but she realized now that it had also been a limitation. She had relied on her speed, power, and victories to define herself. But Draxus, Exile, and this human had shown her that there was more to being a warrior than defeating others. I understand now," she said quietly. "It is not enough to strike first or to overpower. A warrior must also see, think, and adapt." "I never realized that before." Ethan smiled faintly. "Few do. Even the greatest warriors can learn from challenges they did not expect. Today, you faced not just me, but the limits of your own understanding, and you grew stronger." Lyra looked down at the broken pieces of her blade. For so long it had been a symbol of her victories, her identity, her pride. Now it felt like a teacher, reminding her that strength alone was never the whole story. She picked up a shard, turning it over in her hands, then let it fall back to the ground. "I must forge a new path," she said, "not just as a champion, but as a warrior who understands what it means to fight wisely, to survive, and to respect strength in all its forms." Ethan nodded. "And that is why you will survive here on Draxus and beyond. You have been tested in ways no arena could ever provide. You have learned to think, to adapt, and to face challenges with both courage and wisdom." The wind shifted, carrying distant sounds, howls of strange creatures, the cries of Drax's predators, and the rustling of rocks under shifting terrain. Lyra felt the lessons of exile and duel settle into her mind. Draxus had not only tested her body, but had sharpened her instincts, her mind, and her spirit. And Ethan, calm and intelligent, had shown her that even a human, often underestimated, could challenge her in ways she had never imagined. For a long moment, they stood in silence, two warriors who had met on equal terms. Lyra realized that victory and defeat were no longer the measure of her skill. Today she had learned humility, patience, and respect, lessons that no arena could teach. "Tell me," she asked finally, her voice steady, "how did you know you could stand against me?" Ethan's eyes met hers. "I did not know for certain, but I trusted in my observation, my patience, and my willingness to learn. You are strong, Lyra, but strength is only one part of being a warrior. Intelligence, courage, and understanding complete the rest." Lyra smiled faintly, a warmth in her chest she had never expected. She had thought of this human as a challenge, perhaps even an annoyance. Now she saw him as a teacher in his own way. Not because he was stronger, but because he had opened her eyes to a new understanding of strength itself. The sun continued its descent, casting long shadows across the plateau. Lyra felt a renewed determination. Her exile had brought her here, to this rocky world, to this human, and now she understood that she could use these lessons not just to survive, but to become better, wiser, and stronger than ever before. "I will rebuild," she said, more to herself than to Ethan. "Not just my weapon, but my approach, my skill, and my mind. I will face challenges not with pride alone, but with wisdom and strategy." Ethan nodded. "And when you do, you will be unstoppable. Not because of raw power, but because you will be complete as a warrior." For the first time, Lyra felt a calm certainty in her heart. The plateau was no longer a place of fear or challenge, it was a place of growth. Draxus had tested her, the human had challenged her, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable than ever before. "Will you remain here?" she asked, glancing at him. "Or do you have other challenges to face?" Ethan shrugged slightly. "I have my path, but I will always remember this duel. And perhaps our paths will cross again. True warriors learn from every encounter. Lyra nodded. She knew he was right. This was not the end, but a beginning. A beginning of a new understanding of strength, courage, and respect. The broken blade at her feet was not a symbol of failure, but of growth, of lessons learned, and of wisdom gained. As darkness fell across Draxus, the two warriors turned their faces toward the horizon. The plateau seemed to stretch endlessly, full of challenges, opportunities, and lessons. Lyra felt excitement for the first time in months, not just as a fighter, but as a true warrior ready to grow beyond limits she had never imagined. Ethan began walking toward the distant rocks, leaving a path of dust behind him. Lyra watched him go, feeling a sense of respect and gratitude. He had challenged her not to defeat her, but to teach her a lesson about true strength. She bent down, gathering the shards of her broken blade. They would be reforged, not just as a weapon, but as a symbol of her growth. She would return to Zytheria not just as a champion, but as a warrior who understood that power alone was not enough. Strategy, intelligence, courage, and respect were equally important. For the first time, Lyra smiled without pride. She felt humility, strength, and clarity all at once. The lessons of Exile, the harshness of Draxus, and the duel with Ethan had reshaped her. She was no longer the same warrior who had been exiled. She was stronger, wiser, and more complete. As the stars began to shine in the sky above Draxus, Lyra raised her head and looked beyond the plateau. Her future was vast, full of challenges, growth, and the unknown. But she was ready. She had faced the unexpected, been challenged, and learned lessons that no arena could teach. She was ready for whatever came next. Ethan's figure disappeared into the distance, leaving Lyra alone on the plateau. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not from victory but from understanding. The duel had ended, but the growth it inspired would last a lifetime. Lyra sat on a rock, gazing at the horizon. Drax's wind continued to howl, carrying with it the scent of distant creatures and the promise of new challenges. She realized that true strength was not about defeating every opponent, but about learning, adapting, and respecting both oneself and others. The shattered blade at her feet was a reminder of her journey. She had been the champion of Zytheria, undefeated and proud. Now she was a warrior reborn, strong, wise, and ready to face any challenge. In the silence of Draxus, with dust swirling and stars shining above, Lyra felt a sense of completion. The human had challenged her, the world had tested her, and she had grown. She rose to her feet, feeling the strength in her muscles, the clarity in her mind, and the courage in her heart. Her exile had ended, not with defeat, but with understanding. And Lyra knew that from this day forward she would face the universe as a true warrior, one who combined skill, strength, intelligence, and respect into a force greater than any opponent could imagine. The plateau was empty now, save for the wind and the rising stars. Lyra picked up the largest shard of her broken blade, holding it as a reminder of her lessons. She smiled, not with pride, but with confidence, wisdom, and the quiet strength of a warrior who had truly grown. And somewhere, across the vast galaxy, stories would spread of Lyra, the warrior who had been exiled, who had faced the harsh world of Draxus, and who had learned that true strength comes not from victory alone, but from understanding, respect, and the courage to grow. The stars shone brighter over Draxus that night, as if acknowledging her journey. And Lyra, standing tall, felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing she was stronger, wiser, and more complete than she had ever been.